Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What the Sales. Today, I'm joined with Colin. Colin, you can introduce yourself.
Hey guys, yeah, my name's Colin Lewandowski. Been a member of APS for the past couple of years. Had the pleasure to lead the organization with Hayden over the past 2 years and do some sales competitions with him and things like that. So definitely excited to be on here and talk in a time like this when kind of everyone's locked in their houses and things like that. So looking forward to it.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to take this episode to talk about job placement and finding a great job and internship while in college, and the many obstacles that come with that. Colin and I have both found great successes in this search for jobs and internships. We're going to share our stories and a bit of insight we have for you guys. So when you're making these decisions, you land in some of the top companies out there for us students. So we're going to start off with a few stories of basically our start in college and where we got to. So we're going to start off with freshman year and when you first come into college, the assumptions made about you and how it's sort of difficult in your first year, but ways you get the most success out of it. So Colin will walk you through what he did his freshman year and his first job fair.
Yeah, so freshman year, I came into college knowing that business was something I was interested in, but didn't have a clear idea of where I wanted to go. I think my major was either finance or accounting, and I kind of switched back and forth a couple times. I had the idea to be a financial advisor. I knew I wanted to work directly with people. I knew I didn't want to do a desk job, um, independently for the majority of my days at work. So my freshman year, I went to the job fair first semester, and was really nervous. Threw a suit on and went, and actually went with a buddy of mine who went to high school with me, and we literally went in a pack. It was me and him. We visited multiple companies, um, literally as like a tag team. We were just nervous and we didn't know, but we decided to go, which was great. And I'll tell you, every employer we talked to, looking back at it now, I would have thought that we would have gotten laughed at. But actually, every employer asked us what year we were, and once we told them we were freshmen, they said, good for you for coming out and experiencing this job fair that can be very intimidating to a lot of people. They tell us we spoke to some people today who it was their first time at the job fair and they're seniors looking for a full-time job. So for me, that was really reassuring to know that getting involved that early can pay dividends. And I think just having the experience of going up and that nervousness you get when you're about to talk to somebody who could be a literal hiring manager who could be hiring you for a job. I think getting that experience out of the way your freshman year will open the doors up for internships and things like that, especially as you transition into sophomore year when it's a little more realistic to land a nice internship. So, for me, I think it was just really from the start of college, putting myself out there. I knew I was going to be there for 4 years and I wanted to make the most of it. So for me, just kind of putting myself out there was definitely probably some of the best advice I could give anyone. But I'll turn it over to you, Hayden.
Yeah, going off that, I mean, that's all great stuff. Putting yourself out there in those uncomfortable situations are huge when you're first starting off in college. What I found success in, it's a similar story as Colin, is I went through with a group of friends too, and I even memorized a script, which is something you should never do, but that's just something I did when I first went. And learning from that, looking back on, I laugh at myself, but I got a script of why they should hire me, and I read that. And it's a terrible thing to do coming in scripted, it should be more conversational. But what I did learn from doing that is I got a lot of denial my freshman year, which I thought, looking back, is such a good learning curve for myself. I think getting told no is hugely important, especially in sales. Freshman year, building that up and building up that confidence of, I've got told no 4 times, what's the fifth time going to hurt? Keep building that up. So when you do go to a job fair in your later years, when you're a top candidate, you have so much confidence speaking to them that no doesn't even hurt you anymore. It's just you're expecting yes at that point because you've heard no so many times, and you're ready for whatever they can tell you. So going freshman year is extremely important, and we both can stress it so much that you need to go freshman year so you do build up that confidence and build up that endurance of taking no and understanding what exactly that means. So starting off with freshman year, we both can harp on just to go, put your foot in the door, and the worst you can do is try. You get in there and just try your best. So following freshman year, I think both of us had a bit of a learning curve in understanding what we wanted to do. So, Colin, walk us through what you did to figure out what field you wanted to get into and what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, I think at least for me, the biggest thing was seeking out people and in some of the fields that I knew I was interested in, and also starting to get more involved on campus. So my sophomore year, I joined a social fraternity. I got to know a lot more people and expanded my network. As a result, I met some juniors and seniors who were in the business college who had taken some classes and kind of got to learn about what some of the valuable takeaways they got from some of the upper level classes. One of them being Merle Sutton's professional selling class. I received that as a recommendation. And some other things I did was, I was thinking about pursuing a career in financial advising. So I reached out to someone who worked at JP Morgan as a financial advisor and talked to him about his day to day and learn about it potentially being difficult to get into that field fresh out of college, to be managing millions of dollars. So thought maybe I should consider some other opportunities. And, towards the end of my sophomore year, I eventually interviewed with Liberty Mutual Insurance, and they had an open position as a sales intern. So for me, I figured, bouncing some ideas off of, my parents and some other people that I looked up to, thought it was a great opportunity to get some sales experience. And that's kind of where I realized that, sales was something I was definitely going to pursue as a career. And I think, like Hayden mentioned previously, getting a lot of no's was good, especially in an insurance role where it's pretty cutthroat. And a lot of people, the last thing they want to pick up the phone to is an insurance agent trying to sell them some insurance. I think that it was a great entry for me to realize that, sales is the right field for me. I can do this. I like this. I like the chase. I like, being able to be competitive and strive towards goals with exceeding a quota and things like that. So I think once you kind of realize the career path you want to go into, the next step is finding what industry you want to work, what industry you want to work in. And beyond that, whether you want to be inside making phone calls with a team in that type of an environment, or outside sales, where you're face to face with clients. So I think, really, again, it all stems back to getting experience early on in your college career, so you can see, here's where I want to be after I graduate, and then here's where I want to be 10 years after that. Maybe it's a leadership position within sales, maybe it's not, but I think that, getting those experiences and talking to the right people early on is ultimately what's most beneficial.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and a similar path for myself. My freshman year, I got involved with sales competitions and did our internal sales competition at BGSU, and just like many before me, I failed at that first one, but it was a huge learning curve. I got my foot in the door with sales professor Greg Rich, and he introduced me to selling and sales. Made a few conversations on where this could potentially go, and he saw something in me, obviously. So we worked together to fulfill that. So looking back on it 3 years later, I think he was a huge asset to myself. So with Colin and I both, we harp on finding someone who sees something in you and sees somewhere you can build success on. So finding that early is a huge milestone on achieving some of these top internships and jobs. And then we both, our first internships are just, you're in there, like Colin said, very cutthroat. You're making calls and dialing every day. I worked at a marketing firm, so I wasn't even sales, but I was making those cold calls, trying to get information, get past the gatekeepers and whatnot. So it's very just getting told no a lot and building up that confidence. All this is just building up confidence. So in later job interviews and chances to showcase your skills, you do come off as, I've been here before and I know what I'm doing. You can trust me. So that's huge, especially being a younger student in a higher role. Speaking on that, is I was able to get an internship my freshman year and in my sophomore year, and now my junior year. I'm always one step behind, it seems like, but having that confidence of being there before, they can trust the sophomore in a junior role position, or they can trust a freshman in an internship position when they haven't even taken any business classes really yet. So just being able to portray yourself as that is extremely important, and figure out what you wanted to do. So like I said, I was in that marketing consulting firm, my first internship, and I thought I was going to be in marketing. But after making the calls and talking, I was like, I kind of like this sales call role, and having independence and having, my own goals to hit each day when I come into the office. So I said, I'm going to focus on sales moving into sophomore year a bit. And that's when I started joining the sales club, second semester, freshman year, and getting involved there. So building off this, we're going to talk about how we got into our current, likings, and finding out what sector of the business we wanted to work for in full time or in our next internship. So, Colin, you could introduce where you're planning to work and how you got, focused on where you wanted to work.
Yeah, so fortunately, I was following an internship my junior year with Gartner, who was kind of an IT company who works with all types of technology companies. So I think that, branching off of that, it was great to learn about um, the tech landscape as a whole. And I didn't imagine that technology sales was exactly what I wanted to go into. I was, contemplating medical sales or pharmaceutical and a few other things similar. But I think that again, it branches back to getting involved, getting those internships. It's going to help you see what you want to do. But following my internship with Gartner, um, it was a nice resume booster, and it was also a great learning experience. And was able to get an interview with Microsoft and also with LinkedIn. And I think those, while Microsoft is the parent company for LinkedIn, they kind of run independently. Um, and fortunately, was able to get a job offer from both of those companies. Um, Definitely was a decision for me. It wasn't a clear cut one or the other. I decided to go with Microsoft, but fortunately with the internship experience I had, I was probably ahead of a lot of other candidates. So I was able to accept back in, I think it was September, early October at the latest for my senior year. So, if you do the math, it's literally like 8 months up until I had my start date. So, you know, if you do the hard work ahead of time, I think the first few years of college, I think you set yourself up for a pretty relaxed senior year and the ability to accept an offer. Um, and you're kind of relaxing, you're enjoying your senior year, making the most of it while some of your peers are wondering, why didn't I get an internship? What am I going to do for a job? My parents are going to kick me out of the house unless I can find, some type of job. And I know people who are going through that right now. And I think the other important lesson that I learned from that is, getting something lined up early. You never know what's going to happen, 2, 5, 10 months from now. I mean, look at the current job market. This is probably one of the worst times in history to go out and find a job. So, you do the heavy lifting, you do the hard work beforehand. I think a valuable lesson is that you're gonna set yourself up for success, and you're gonna be living pretty carefree while some of your peers are working their butts off every day applying to jobs and not hearing back from anyone. So, I think for me, it's just really working hard those first couple of years that like we've talked about so far, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about throughout this call. But if you do the hard work beforehand, it's going to pay off. And for me, it did. And I'm just waiting until my start date, and I'm ready to start my career.
Yeah, so building off that, we both interned at Gartner this summer, and we could probably even make a separate video on our experience there, because there is a lot from this past summer that we did learn and take into account moving forward with the company. So going into my internship last summer with Gartner, I had no clue where I did want to go and what part of business I did want to sell for. I know I wanted to do sales, but I didn't exactly know where. Interning with Gartner really shed light on tech and showed me that they're so involved in today's world, and they're such a pivotal part in almost every business out there. So they look like a backbone of a lot of businesses, and I noticed this is where I want to go. And with my junior year this year, I knew I wanted to secure an internship that would make a difference in my job search and really stand out on my resume. So I really aimed for a lot of the top companies that you see here on the screen. I did get an interview with LinkedIn as well as Amazon. Made it to the final stages of both and decided to go with Amazon with their AWS sector, so their Amazon Web Services sector. So I'll be starting with them in the summer this year. So finding out where I did want to go was a huge light on me. So what that is we've both been preaching, it's just trial and error. So we tried out a lot of stuff our first 2 years or first year of college, and we found out what we liked and what we didn't like, and you just keep making decisions from there. So what we've both been stressing this whole time is where do I find out what I want to do? Where do I want to work? Well, you have to try stuff to figure that out. We both tried a lot. Colin tried insurance. I tried marketing consulting. We tried a lot and talked to a ton of people to get insight on where we did want to spend. And we were like, you know what? I like this. I don't like this. You have to start freshman year, sophomore year in this job search and understanding what you want to do. You can't just pick up the bags junior year, senior year and say, hey, I'm ready. I'm ready to work. I've wasted the last 3-4 years of college. Sure, you have a 4.0, but did you really sit down and think about after college and think about what you wanted to do? So that's highly important. It's just getting that experience and getting involved in clubs and internships and activities and going to that job fair and getting told no. So that all led us to Colin and I both securing jobs at these top 5 tech companies and understanding where we wanted to go and securing jobs and internships. And where we want to go, we're using our experience to make these decisions. So looking at this, Colin, can you tell us about a bit of your interviews at Microsoft and LinkedIn, and tell us what that looked like and how you prepared for them?
Yeah, sure. And before I go into that, I'll just branch off of what you just said about, going through 4 years and you got this great GPA. And,
Sure.
personally, I have a very good GPA. I think GPA can be a good indicator of maybe work ethic or time management and things like that. But at the end of the day, especially in a career like sales, when you're talking to a company, they're not looking at your GPA. They want to see, are you a likable person? And that's huge because your interviewer needs to endorse you to the company to make a hire. And along with that, is this person someone who in this interview process can really communicate their experiences effectively? You can't go in there to an interview and say, here's my GPA, and just read your resume to them. They have your resume, they're probably looking at it while you're talking to them. They want to hear, what did you contribute and what value did you bring to the organization or the club or whatever you're involved in. So a great way to do that, is to talk about, hey, I have this club on my resume that I was involved in. Here's what I did to bring value to the club. And whether that's a percentage increase in membership, maybe you were involved in recruitment, or maybe you were a treasurer for an organization. And, I was able to save X amount of money using this software program or using this new site that we decided to go with. Just something to show the value that you brought to the organization you were at. Because at the end of the day, these organizations are making the hiring decision hoping that you can bring value to their organization. Um, so for me, full-time job search in terms of interviews is a lot less stressful than I thought. And I am the type of person who needs to be 100% prepared for anything I do. So I definitely did put in the time, hours of homework on the company, hours of research on Glassdoor about what to expect from the interview process. And, furthermore, even seeking out people my age or maybe BG alum that are a little bit older who are working at the company. Anything you can find out is great. Through my interview process with Microsoft, I connected with one of my dad's friends who knew someone who worked in what my role would be at Microsoft. I spoke to him and he asked me some questions, and he actually ended up sending me as an endorsement email to one of the ladies I ended up interviewing with. It was a crazy, weird coincidence, but it's just a testament to what putting yourself out there, seeking out people in your industry at the company you're looking at, what that can do for you. He said I impressed him on our conversation with my knowledge of the company and knowledge of the position before even interviewing there. And he ended up sending an email to the exact lady that I had one of my 3 on-site interviews with. So crazy coincidence, but just shows what can come out of, really taking the extra step and preparing for an interview effectively. But for me, what I really want to stress on is not all interviews are going to be the same. For some internships, and especially in a time like this, a lot of the stuff's going to be virtual. So that might be a virtual sales role play where you're just doing, a reenactment of a phone call, or just some behavioral interview questions. But for final interview days in general, some of the advice I have is to really prepare your energy on learning the company and the industry at a high level. You don't need to know every little detail, but you want to be able to have a conversation about the company, what they do, maybe their mission statement or vision, and then also the industry. What's happening in the industry. So a time like this, it's probably really important to be looking at cloud-based stuff and security, because a lot of companies are working remotely right now and virtually. So um, those are some big topics that are being talked about right now, and that's simple to learn about if you just want to follow the company you're looking at on LinkedIn and similar companies, just to get a glance at the industry. But really, when you're on that final on-site interview day, if you're intimidated and scared with everyone you're talking to the whole day and everyone who's interviewing you, I would say you probably chose the wrong company, because, in my experience, I've had 3 final on-site interview days. All of them went extremely well. All of them received offers. And for me, you do the preparation ahead of time, and when you're there, you're getting to know the company, and you're essentially interviewing the company. For me, I've never looked at an interview as like, this is life or death. I've looked at it as, if this is the right fit for me, I'm prepared. I want to learn more about them, and you essentially want to interview the company. So, you're learning if you're going to be a good fit there just as much as they're learning if you would be a good fit. Um, so for me, I think I've had meaningful conversations with every single person I've interviewed with at the final day. Have them all in my LinkedIn network, ask for their email if I wanted to send a follow up, and um, it's one of those things where preparation and confidence, I think, like Hayden touched on earlier, the experience you get through your first few years of college with trial and error, it builds your confidence over time. So when you come to that final interview stage, you're ready to go, and it's game time, and you know exactly what to expect. So for me, I think preparation is the biggest thing that I would suggest when you're going to a final on-site interview day.
Yeah, I think a lot with these companies is finding out their values and what their culture looks like and identifying what you like. It just happened to be that you and I both, are working at one of these top five big companies, but that's not all we looked at. We looked at their cultures and their value and what they did as a business and how their day to day runs as a business. And we had to look at ourselves and figure out that we aligned with what they value. I know just with LinkedIn, something that interested me was one of their values and culture is humor. I really liked that. I thought I resonated with it. And if a company is willing to put that on their website as something they believe in, that's a company you want to work for. I think every day was fun. Everyone you interviewed with that company was really outgoing and really enjoyable to talk to. So, like you said, if you're nervous in every interview phase, that's probably not somewhere you want to work. You should be a little nervous, but you should not be like all worked up the night before and worked up on the call. It should be a relaxing conversation with somebody that you're actually interested in learning more about, just like they're interested in learning more about you as a candidate. So yeah, that's huge. Is just looking at their culture and their values and looking at it, reading about them, and really connecting with each one. Because if you read it and you're like, you know what, I don't really like doing that. I don't like going above and beyond my work. I like to just do what I'm expected and that. But if the company expects you that, go somewhere where they just want you to do the average load and just be really good at what you're doing. So that's something I really like to stress on my half, and what I look into is just looking at their values and the culture of the business and identifying with that. So when we look at these companies, they really stand out as top competitors. What are you most excited for at working at Microsoft, Colin?
I think probably first and foremost, the mentorship that I'll receive. The first year is a lot of training and learning about the company and the role, and they're not just going to throw you into essentially a field sales role right off the bat. So I think for me as a fresh college grad, knowing little to nothing about what I'm going to be selling, I think it'll be great to get paired with a manager and a mentor. From my understanding, Microsoft obviously uh, pairs you with a manager that you'll report to, but you'll also have it's called an Aspire teammate or something like that, where it's someone who's been through the whole first year of training and that you can really bounce any questions that you have off. So for me, mentorship's been so big throughout my whole experience in college and just learning from people and seeing where I want to go and what I want to do, that I know that continuing those types of relationships will be huge for me to learn A, about the company, B, what I'm going to be doing, and C, how to be successful in the job. So I think probably gaining some great mentorship and finding a leader that I can look up to is what I'm most eager to experience.
Yeah, that's great. And just a couple questions here. So let's say you're third year in college, you graduate next year. I really didn't do anything freshman, sophomore year. Junior year is just about over. Um, what do I do to secure a good job moving out of college? And I have no clue what I want to do. What would you recommend you do as a student to, differentiate yourself in this next year as well as figure out your path? What would you recommend?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great question. I know there's definitely a lot of people in that type of a situation. I would think the biggest thing is to not be afraid to reach out. I can tell you that I've reached out to over 100 contacts on LinkedIn and email in terms of finding jobs, and I can tell you that my response rate is well under 10% on that. So that means I'm sending messages to companies like Salesforce. I reached out to Workday, Oracle, lots of companies that I had interest in and wanted to learn more about. And there's nothing wrong with getting no as a response or getting no response at all, because at the end of the day, um, you need to find what company's going to be the right fit for you. So I didn't receive responses from a couple companies, and a couple I did, and learned that I would have to move geographically to somewhere I didn't want to move, or I would have to do 4 or 5 years of inside sales before I could get to field sales. So you just learn as you go in terms of what works and what doesn't. But for me, I think it's reaching out. I know Hayden mentioned earlier that early on in his sophomore year, he met Dr. Rich, and Dr. Rich kind of took an interest in him as a young, hardworking sales student. And I think it's really important. Hayden and I have both shared some similar mentors in our career at BG, and I think it's positioned us for some successful careers, especially starting off, graduating college. And if you have someone that you can bounce an idea off of, or you have someone that you can say, hey, um, here's what I want to do. How can I get there? They're going to steer you on the right path. It's going to be up to you to do all the hard work, but there are ways to get involved. Even if you decided to wait a little bit too long in college, and you're at the point where time's just kind of gotten past you, and you're kind of realizing I need to turn this into something. This whole college experience. So I would say seek out whether it's a professor or a mentor. I've met people through LinkedIn that were BG alum and that have been completely willing to help. So I think it's not being able to, it's not being afraid to get no as an answer or to get no response. I think it's being willing to put yourself out there. I think it all goes back to that. That would be my advice.
Yeah, so this whole time we've been harping is finding guidance and building up that confidence of hearing no over and over again and putting yourself out there. So really work together and figuring that out, and finding guidance. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background.
It's okay.
But yeah, find that guidance and that direction to build that confidence in sales. But yeah, so Colin, any last tips for securing these jobs and internships with these top companies and really differentiating yourself in college?
Um, one thing I would say, set goals for yourself. That's something that's very important to me, is being goal oriented, and whether that's your personal life or your professional life, preferably both. If that's going to be about your health, or that's going to be maybe you have a goal of reading, a couple books in a time like this where you don't have a whole lot of responsibilities. Whatever it's going to be, I would say goal setting is huge. For me, it's always been my goal to start off in a successful sales role throughout college, and I've found different ways to kind of track myself and set some metrics to make sure I'm meeting that, whether that's compensation wise, or maybe you want a company with X amount of time off and great benefits and things like that. I think you really need to set goals for yourself, and don't stop until you get there. And as an example of that, one of my buddies is in a finance career. I think he's starting in Boston in like June or July of this year. And finance can be pretty tough to get into a good firm early on in your career. So his freshman year, he was determined to get an internship. And I remember having texting conversations and phone calls with him too, and asking how his job or his internship search was going freshman year. And he's like, I got 40 or 50 companies lined up, and he's literally cold calling 40 or 50 companies each week, trying to talk to a recruiter or a manager, and these are smaller firms, just to get his foot in the door. And, he's really spending hours and hours each week just to get an internship. And eventually he found a firm with like 25 employees that was willing to talk to him, and he got an offer. But this was after, I think it was after 2 months of him making 30, 40, 50 cold calls each week, getting told no, getting told don't call back, and things like that. So and that's finance. It can be a little different. Can be a little bit more tough to get into a position early on, but still, you just think about there's people out there putting in that kind of time to make sure that they achieve their goals. I think that's a really good example to have for a lot of you who are really wanting to succeed and start your career in a successful manner. I think it's goal setting and being determined and not stopping until you get there is huge.
Yeah, not being afraid to reach out, like you said, that's what I think we both did. We reached out to so many people to just get our foot in the door with these companies and move from there. And then my last bit of advice that I found, and Colin probably has found too, is we have both used each other so many times working on these interview processes. I know I called him a handful of times throughout my whole process, and just role played a lot of interviews and questions with him, and worked on what I wanted to say, and if I was making the right decision. And he, because we worked together all year, so we really know each other well. So it's good to have someone you could work through these interviews with, and someone, to report your successes to and report your failures, and get feedback along the whole way, because that's very important. So make sure you have a good foundation of people who support you and want to see you succeed, and that you could go back to and tell them about what happened, good or bad, and just get feedback and responses and how that went. So that's really important, and that's a huge piece of information I could share with you guys that I really enjoyed along the way. It made the process fun, coming back after an interview and talking to all my buddies and my mentors, saying, hey, this is how it went. What do you think I should do from here? I did this. What do you think about that? So getting feedback and learning from it all. So yeah, well, we both really appreciate everyone sitting through the video here today and getting information from us. I hope you have a lot of relevant facts from us, and you feel great going into your next interview and securing that top job and internship. Colin, any closing remarks?
Yeah, no, I'm glad I had the opportunity to come on today. And like Hayden mentioned, good luck with all of your future endeavors. Keep working hard. And yeah, it was a pleasure being on. So thanks.
Great. Thanks for coming. We will see you guys next video. Take care and stay healthy.
Did you end it?